Hello to you all, and welcome to the third and for now the last episode of our webinar series on the revolution in distribution. As you might already know, my name is Steffi Veen. I'm a digital strategist within Valtech Netherlands, and again today I'm hosting this webinar. And with me again is Pascal Lagarde, one of our commerce directors. Welcome to you, Pascal.
Thanks.
And with me is also Dirk Lassig, and he's one of our directors, transformation consulting within our German office. Welcome to you, Dirk.
Hello, Steffi.
So for the last 2 weeks, it's not running too fast. For the last 2 weeks, we've been talking about the distribution revolution. And in the first webinar, we mainly focused around the trends that are shaping the industry. So what is changing in customer behavior, what is happening in the market around it, third-party marketplaces. But we already also touched upon some brief differentiators on how to differentiate yourself from emerging marketplaces, for example. In the previous webinar, we mainly focused on how to actually differentiate. So how to empower your sales teams with the right digital tooling to personalize the experience, but also how to make the service and the experience way more convenient and more transparent for your customers. So maybe you thought by the end of the last webinar, well, that's all great, I really want this, but how do I enable this? Well, for today we actually focus on the how, and that's today's topic, and that's a major topic, and it's covering way more than we can cover in half an hour. But since we want to keep this snackable and short, we will focus today on 2 aspects of that transformation, on how to enable that transformation. And first of all, that's developing or moving towards more flexible and scalable technologies on one hand, and on the other hand, how do you enable that with the right organizational setup and the right way of working. Pascal will go more in deep dive on the flexible and scalable technologies, and Dirk will more obviously based on his expertise and tell us a little bit more about transforming organizations. As I said, it's just like touching upon 2 parts of that transformation. There is way more to it, changing your value proposition, your business model, your touch points, experimenting within the organization. So at the end of the session, we will provide 3 very short polls to you, and then you can let us know which one of those topics is most interesting to you, how much time you actually want to spend on it, and what type of format you prefer most, because then we can take that away from this session to our hopefully next session. I think I talked a lot. Let's go into the first topic as we discussed. So what we've seen in the last decade or so is that due to emerging technologies, and maybe foremost connected devices, starting with a smartphone, the number of channels and touch points for an organization have been growing rapidly. And that also means that the platform and the technology behind it is becoming more and more complex. The whole architecture is becoming more and more complex. So Pascal, can you tell us something about the modern approaches companies can use to solve these type of challenges, and why these approaches are so relevant in today's market?
Yeah, absolutely, Steffi. Yeah, I think as you also said in your introduction, the world is in motion, and the challenges that companies are trying to resolve and the user expectations that they're trying to meet are changing, and the bar is being raised. B2B companies as well, they need to compete or are expected to be on the same level, maybe that's a better definition, with B2C companies. I mean, we expect the same functionality, the same experience from our B2B environments as we would from, Amazon or Nike. And I think, so we see a growing need for architectures that re-enable the things that the business wants to accomplish. And I think in B2B, historically, there has been a lot of automation, but it's been very system oriented and very kind of focused on the internal processes of companies, and then kind of expose it to the outside world. And we now see kind of the other perspective of a customer-centric approach that really helps customers across their journey. You know, a term that I hear a lot is that companies say, we want to make it easy to do business with us. And you know, those are all, I think, really good indicators that B2B organizations are rethinking the way they use digital. And here on screen, there is like a bunch of these topics that kind of feed into that overarching ambition. It needs to be faster. Companies are reinventing the way they sell their products. They're reinventing their products, and they're looking for ways to bring that to the market. And digital has become such a big channel that, you know, the ROI needs to be there, and the world is changing rapidly. And I think we've said it already numerous times, also in the previous sessions, that COVID has shown how important it is for businesses to be agile and to adapt their offering and their go-to-market on changing environments. And technology should be an enabler in that. And that's, you know, that's where I think we see a change to, for instance, composable architectures, and more in general to more nimble and more agile systems that allow companies to make those changes, and to allow those product owners to introduce new products or new go-to-markets, etc. And one of the key elements we see is, you know, a move away from these big kind of suites of solutions to architecture that are composed of multiple solutions that are really good at the specific things that the companies are looking for and that the end users are looking for. And a term that I think has grown in importance or in recognition over the last couple of years is MACH, you know, microservices, API first, cloud native, and headless, that allows, you know, these systems to talk to each other, to work together, etc. But the whole idea behind it is, you know, it's modular, it's decoupled, it allows for quick updates to parts of the digital landscape rather than complete overhauls if your current solution doesn't fit the purpose anymore.
Interesting. And can you also tell us a little bit more about what you see as the major benefits of such a composable architecture?
Yeah, so there's a couple of aspects to that. So one is what I already mentioned a couple of times, kind of the agility to change depending on you know, on what's happening on the outside world or the products that you are developing, and then the speed with which you are able to adapt the user interface, the functionality, the business logic, or add new components to your architecture for a specific task. Wavin, that we see here on the lower left-hand side of the slide, is a good example. They're a producer of plastic piping and drainage pipes and those kind of things. And under COVID, they decided to use part of their infrastructure to build personal protection equipment for frontline workers in hospitals and other healthcare institutes. And while they were very fast in adapting and creating the product, they also needed to be just as fast in creating a sales channel, because they didn't have a direct to business sales channel. They completely relied on distributors for their traditional products. And you know, with a cloud-based solution, we were able to, from initial idea to go live, we were able to help them in a period of 3 weeks by bringing that live, and not just creating the shop, but actually integrating it into their logistics systems as well. So I think that's a great example of the speed. And there's other things, you know, we see IoT devices, connected devices, you know, connected cars, trucks, etc., providing kind of new touch points all of a sudden from which, you know, people expect to be making a transaction or getting information or in whatever other way interacting with you as a brand. And so Tesla and Audi, etc., obviously, you know, selling their functionality on demand through a navigation system or through an app, or, you know, those are really different touch points in comparison to a traditional web shop that runs in the browser on your desktop or on your laptop. So those are, you know, examples of how you see business models changing and the need for the touch points to change along with those developments. And the fact that the front end is, you know, more or less decoupled from the business logic allows it to create or to change those front ends, you know, fairly quickly and without, you know, having to redeploy entire environments, etc. Because that's typically the challenge when making changes to enterprise solutions, is that the process of doing that just takes too long, or at least longer than the business wants it to take.
Yeah, that makes sense. But this is for the majority of our clients, is a completely new thing. It's a completely new approach to technology. So that obviously requires something from the partnership. It requires something from the company. So can you also, what if one of our listeners is currently thinking, well, this is interesting. So what are the ingredients to success for such a project?
Yeah, so I think typically we like to look at it from 4 different angles. It's the business angle, in which, you know, we want to make sure that there is actual business value. The end user angle, that's also what I talked about in the beginning. You know, making sure that whatever we create actually has value for end users, and you know, they need to be willing to use it. Whether we can actually create it, and that's the technical aspect of it, of, you know, building the solution and integrating it into existing landscapes, etc. And then the organizational part around it, that, you know, we can build this, you know, this engine or this factory or whatever, but you need to have the processes and the people and the vision to actually get the value out of it. And so that's kind of the 4 angles that we like to look at. And one thing that is, I think, key, but also, you know, these composable architectures allow you to do that, is keep it small. So start somewhere, start with an experiment, start with a single product that you're looking to introduce to, or a new market that you are looking to approach, and rather stop there, small, learn, and then gradually kind of build upon it, rather than doing a big bang introduction. From a technical point, that's not needed anymore. So we really advise our clients to then actually use that value of being able to start small to their benefit, and do the pilot or do the proof of concept, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Can you also say something about the pilot that maybe some of the listeners and viewers have been seeing just before we started the broadcast? Because there was a little video about an experiment we did as well, right?
Actually, yeah, that's a great example. So we work together with Content Stack, one of these. It's a headless content management solution, so it completely fits that MACH acronym. And they asked us to do an experiment how we could use their content management system in combination with an AR application. And I think that was a great example where together we tried to figure out, okay, what does that, you know, how would it have, you know, value for end users, especially in a time like this in COVID, where maybe you do want to go into a shop but don't want to touch products, etc., and actually use your own phone to get more information on a product. And then once you have selected your product and brought it home, still use that same app to help you use it, and eventually try to figure out, you know, what's the next product that I'm going to buy. So I think there we looked at it from the business angle, we looked at it from the end user angle. We used modern technology and cloud-based technology to do something really quickly, because this was a 3-week proof of concept, and did it with a small team scattered around the world, and that didn't really matter because everybody was working from home anyway. But it shows us a really small proof point for doing this, and it's a great example that we're now bringing to customers to inspire them.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you so much, Pascal.
Sure.
And you also touched already upon the one thing that I think is interesting from an organizational perspective. You mentioned the experimentation, and you also mentioned a different way of working. And I think that's a really nice bridge towards the second topic we had in mind for today's webinar. So this topic has been around for quite some while. I worked at ING before, and we did a lot on agile transformation, as maybe a lot of you know. But how to become an agile organization is a different question. Before we go into how to become an agile organization, just very briefly, Dirk, can you say something? Can you describe an agile organization and why it is so important for a successful digital transformation?
Mm-hmm. Well, in general, as you said, there's a huge buzz around agility already for many years. Yeah, we can see that organizations are in a crisis in the 21st century. That is what Friedmund Malik, the management guru from the St. Gallen University, is saying. And that is because organizations today are operating more and more in very uncertain, volatile, complex, and ambiguous environments. Yeah, we call that term VUCA. If you haven't heard about VUCA, VUCA comes actually from the military, but it's now used in organizational development to describe the challenges that organizations have today. Agility is a trait for an organization to survive in that VUCA world. Yeah, so to be agile means I'm able to change quickly. I'm able to build and change new products and services quickly and improve the time to market. Agility is a trait of an organization. I have to say it's a foundation also for other things like customer centricity and also continuous delivery. So it's not the only trait. So it's not the only thing you have to learn to survive in the VUCA world, but it's the base foundation to have there. Unfortunately, it's not an easy thing to do because it requires a paradigm shift in the way of working, in the way how the organization is organized, also how the processes work, and also how the people think about their work. And so it's really agile is a mindset. It's not just the process change.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more against that point to how to actually make that transformation and change that?
Yeah. Well, because it's a paradigm shift, it's not an easy thing to do. Yeah, it requires, the journey requires usually, it depends of course on the organization, but it requires usually a couple of years. So that is also what we see with other customers. So we are with BMW, we are working for them for many, many years. We have started the first attempt to change a project towards Agile 15 years ago, and we are still in the process and helping them in their Agile transformation. What important is that being Agile doesn't mean it's just a process change. So it of course, it requires process changes and also the adoption of new tools and so on. But it also means that you have to learn new capabilities and skills. So the people have to learn a lot of stuff. And you have to adopt the organizational structures, the organizational setting, and so forth. And then at the latest and more complicated point, it also means that the behavior and the mindset changes. You can only do that if you combine that in a strong vision, and that is one of the first things when you start to get started is to define that vision. Of course, you should not do it alone. It's not someone that is sitting in a like little room and defining the vision. So you need like you need friends, you need a guiding coalition, you need a transformation team that you are building. That is also one of the things you have to do in the beginning of a transformation. You can only do that if you feel the sense of urgency. So, and as I said, organizations are in a crisis. Often that sense of urgency is already there, but you just need to make it visible and make it also communicatable. Yeah. And that is also another thing you have to do. You have to think about communication. So this transformation team, as with BMW, we supported the autonomous driving division, transformation of 1,000 people to jump towards large-scale Scrum. It, of course, started with not just by applying large-scale Scrum. It started with a phase before, in which we formed the transformation team, which was not just a team of managers. There were also like real value workers, programmers, and so forth. They were part of that team. And this team was then basically defining how the rollout should work, what are the implications of the transformation, and so forth. So that is the thing to get started. But then, of course, it's a longer journey and you have to inspect and adapt along the way. So you always have to think about what went well, what went wrong, and what are the things we need to do now. That is because organizational change is also culture change and a tricky one, and it's complex. So complex, we apply basically the same mechanism in the transformation as we do with large software developments. And then an important thing is you need to think about quick wins. Where can I start? And also make the results of agility visible very early on. As an example, a couple of years ago already, we worked for Henkel, and we created a project together with Henkel. So Henkel people, Valtech people together, we moved in a co-working space and we run the project like a startup. And the goal was also to show Henkel, the Henkel organization, hey, this is how it works. And the second goal was to deliver something. And because we were able to deliver with this new way of working, the new B2B, the B2B shop for the adhesives business, which is quite a large business of Henkel, we could show that you can really do enterprise software also with agility. And then the last but not least thing is to sustain the support. So as I said, it requires a couple of years, and you need to be aware that you have to support the change also a couple of years. Yeah. With the sports car company that we are now, I think, in the third year already for supporting them, and they want to carry on. They made already a lot of progress, but it's still ongoing and they still need help. Yeah.
So you've built up a lot of experience within different companies. So you've also seen things that went really well and also things that went really wrong. So can you talk about that a little bit more, like the major learnings from these kind of transformations that you've been doing so far, or that we as a company have been doing so far? And we need to be aware of time, so briefly, and then you refer to
okay, good. Yeah, there's so much things to tell. It's all
I know.
Yeah, quickly. I know. So important thing, of course, as I already said, it's important that you understand the business driver for the change. So often organizations come to us and say, hey, we want to be agile, but why? Why? We want to be better, but why do you need to be better? What's the driver for that change? That's important to and you need to work it out in the beginning. The next thing is that it's the nature of agility that the people need to own their way of working. That's very, very important. So you cannot, or in the traditional world, you would define like the organization and the processes, and then say to the people, here it is, you have to work like that. In Agile, it doesn't work like that. People need to own their processes, because then they are also motivated to change them and to improve them. Then agility cannot be just limited to the IT. Often you see that Agile is something for the IT department. The value stream, so where product ideas are created, starts in business. And so you also need to work on, well, with the business also had to adopt Agile. Then it's a culture change, but culture cannot be built. It needs to emerge. We also say culture follows structure. So don't try to do things like, we want a new culture, go for it. No, it doesn't work. What works, so to say, is that the leadership is showing this culture change. Yeah. So we say the culture transformation starts with the personal transformation of the leader. And also the way how an organization is led is changing a lot. So managers have to let go and foster self-organization. How do they do that? How can it work? How can you create that, like say, room for self-organization? That is something that is also transforming. So if you don't address that, then your transformation will be not successful. But there are more things we have already mentioned here, the white paper, and I think you can also download it from the webinar, from somewhere.
It's already in the handouts. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, good point. Well, thank you so much, Dirk.